Welcome back to another edition of the Hart2Heart Podcast. And my guest today is Allie Gilbert. She's the queen of men's health and also the queen of boner talk. That's right. Welcome to the show, Allie.
Thank you. That was quite the introduction.
I'm just going off your Instagram handle, so that's what it says there, I think, or a little bit. So I figured that would be one of the best places to start. But maybe you can tell the audience a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. As you said, it says normalizing boner talk in my profile. So I specialize in men's health, and my coaching business, which is Silverback Coaching, is comprised of myself and 3 other coaches. And we handle predominantly guys who are looking to become the most elite version of themselves. And we tie in together hormone optimization, fitness, and nutrition to do that. But I personally like to diffuse the awkward, sensitive nature of a lot of the men's health topics by delivering it with humor and crass.
And you do a very good job of doing that. And I definitely want to get into all that today because I have some questions about that for you. But you do have a little bit of an interesting background as to how you got here. I guess you're into golf at one point, and you started training a lot of people in golf who wanted to hit the ball a lot longer. And then I guess most of those people were men. Is that right? And that's sort of how this journey began?
Yeah, when I graduated with my degree in exercise science, like everyone who gets that degree wants to train athletes. And then you quickly realize that unless you're at like the top pro level, they're all broke. And it's quite a weird market. So my hometown of Greenwich, Connecticut had many of the Wall Street business guys who played golf. And I was like, oh, these guys are like really into training and they can afford it. And, they're type A. And I was like, I'm going to learn about golf fitness because I played soccer in college and knew nothing about golf, and dove headfirst into all the Titleist Performance Institute certifications, became the golf fitness person in my town. And that brought me all guys. And as you know, men don't go to the doctor and they're not really open and socially talking about any type of men's health or hormone issues. So I was like, this is an interesting niche. And my business coach at the time was like, run with this and just post about men's hormones. And I was like, okay. And that was like circa 2009, 10, 11, 12. And then fast forward, here we are. So that's pretty much all I talk about.
That's awesome. So basically, like your coaching program that you do, like it's 80% men, something like that, or?
Yeah, roughly. More? We have a few women, but it's mostly guys who have tried to get jacked and shredded, and they've done it the wrong way, and kind of go through that cycle of when they diet down too hard, then they become, or they feel small or skinny fat. And then they overcompensate by eating too much and then get too fat and then slash calories again and end up in the same place where they were. So we help navigate where they're supposed to go and keep them on track for that, and then facilitate the conversation surrounding the scary stuff for them, like testosterone replacement and supplementation and stuff like that. And go from there.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to ask you about, TRT in particular, so testosterone replacement therapy, for people who don't know what TRT is. Like when people come to you, do you find that there's a huge resistance? And like, if there is resistance, like what are they most concerned about? Like, why do guys not want to get their testosterone levels checked? And why do guys not want to go on TRT, perhaps even if they do have low testosterone?
So interestingly enough, and you probably get this a lot, is a lot of guys struggle with the fact that it's a lifelong commitment. And they're like, well, I have to take it for life. And I'm like, what's the problem? Like, why is that an issue? And I realized men do not want to rely on something exogenous for the rest of their life. So that was an interesting struggle that a lot of them brought to me. And then I came to understand why. And a lot of guys are kind of, I guess, victims of a lot of the media stereotypes where it's cheating or going on steroids. It's going to kill them. It's going to cause prostate cancer and heart attacks and all these scary things. And so they're resistant to that because that's what they've been told, or that's what their friends are telling them. And it's kind of this taboo, socially awkward topic for them. Whereas with women, like women going on HRT, no one blinks an eye. They go through menopause and that's like the right next step for them. Whereas with guys, they're like, well, I think I could do everything naturally. And as you know, you can definitely address all your lifestyle stuff, dial in your nutrition, sleep, train, all the things, and it may not work and get them to the levels where they should be producing biologically.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of resistance for a few different reasons, and I agree with everything that you just said. But I think a lot of guys don't want to do it because they almost like having the excuse of like, well, I'm not in good shape because I'm not on TRT, and this guy is in good shape because he is on TRT. And if I stay off TRT, I can always just use this as an excuse. But the reality is that if you do TRT doses and you don't change your lifestyle, your body composition is hardly going to change. I mean, you might put on 2 or 3 pounds of muscle, maybe, if you're doing an appropriate dose, and maybe you'll shed like a pound or 2 of body fat. Again, maybe not. And this too, Allie, like if you're, an overweight guy and you take exogenous testosterone, that all can get converted into estrogen because, bigger guys, may not know this, but, belly fat or body fat, that does have an enzyme called aromatase that converts testosterone to estrogen. But, getting back to my main kind of point I was making, I feel like that's kind of I know it's almost a little bit of a, I guess, sinister point of view in some ways, but I feel like that's why a lot of guys don't go on TRT is because they're going to lose their excuse. Because if they go on TRT and they're still overweight, they're still, not feeling as good as they should be, then, they're kind of, embarrassed about that sort of thing. So I think they like having that excuse.
Yeah, there are a lot of guys that also think they will instantly transform. Like if they sit on the couch and just inject testosterone. You and I know plenty of people that are on TRT that don't necessarily look like it because it is so associated with the bodybuilding world. And, I'm going to look like him if I go on that. And I can't handle that rapid transformation. I'm like, please let me know if that ever happens to somebody. Because I have guys in the gym 5-6 days a week trying to look like that on therapeutic doses of TRT. They're not there yet. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of factors that play into this, and like a TRT dose is not going to make you into Superman. And obviously, like genetics still play a huge role. So, if you're someone who really, really struggles to get abs, like going on TRT, it might make it a little bit easier, but you're still going to be struggling a little bit to get them dependent upon your body composition and just your whole genetic makeup, so, and like, I accept that too. Like my legs are kind of bigger than my upper body. That's just kind of the way it is, and I can certainly train and do things to try to compensate for that, but you do have to, kind of realize where your, own genetics are. But in terms of, the guys making improvements, what's the big thing that you find that they struggle with that you encourage them to do that they just find is too difficult? Is it the nutrition? Is it the sleep? Is it the weightlifting? Like, what do you think is the biggest struggle that they have?
Oh, across the board, I think everyone struggles with nutrition because that's the hard part. That is literally the other 23 hours of the day that you're not in the gym. So the gym is the easy part. And I think since I moved online in 2016, you see a lot of people don't understand what training hard really means because a lot of people have never gone to failure. So that could be something that they're leaving as a factor in their results because they could have their nutrition dialed in. They could have their sleep dialed in. Even if they're on TRT, if you're not training hard enough in the gym and your last rep looks like the first rep, then a lot of results are being left. And that's something that I only really encountered with online coaching because that's why I have people upload videos so that we can see, like, are you guys pushing yourselves or is it just something that you feel, I can do like 10 more reps of this? And understanding what failure truly means, like screaming or really making noise in the gym. Apparently that's like frowned upon nowadays, unless you go to a gym that has like super bro culture. So it's definitely weird.
Yeah, I think that a lot of guys do definitely struggle with nutrition outside of the gym. And one thing that they struggle with too, in addition to nutrition. This is part of nutrition, but different kind of nutrition also too is alcohol intake.
Yeah.
Like I bet a lot of the people who you coach too, they struggle with alcohol ingestion, and especially, you're talking about people in finance, they have very, very high stress jobs. And, sometimes, they think that the only way they can relax is unfortunately to drink. And, there's 7 calories per gram in alcohol. So, pretty high calorie content in alcohol. And then also too, I'm sure you coach all your clients on this, Allie. It can also, wreak havoc on your hormones, decrease your testosterone. So, do you find that a lot of your clients who come to you, that's also an issue sometimes, that you have to, kind of coach them on their sort of social lifestyle or their alcohol intake?
Big time. And it's not just alcohol, it's the whole social circle. So this is something that's actually come up a lot more in the last few years, where if you're the only one in your circle of friends that decides that you want to get jacked and you want to prioritize the gym and you want to go to bed early and change your habits, it really triggers the people around them. And that can be really tough for guys who are not prepared. Like you and I likely have friends who are of similar mindset and go to the gym, and nobody thinks it's weird if you want to train on vacation or if you travel and look for places to train. A lot of people don't live that lifestyle. So when they do prioritize those things, people give them shit for it. And they're like, oh, bro, you could have one drink. Come on. It's not going to ruin your progress. You could have one bite. You could eat this with me. It's not going to kill you. You're not going to lose your abs, like all those things. And we have to prepare people for that. And I say to guys, I'm like, listen, this is going to happen. There's going to be times where you're going to succumb to it and you're going to fuck up. And that's okay. You will become more resilient as time goes on. And you actually may have to change your social circle and edit those relationships to where you only see those people a certain amount of times, and it might be less than before. And you may even make new friends from either the gym or just other people that you meet at events or something else where they have the same goals, same mindset, same priorities. And that's okay, because that does happen. Like people evolve and they do change their circle and realize, oh shit, like I was hanging around people that were actually pulling me down and not allowing me to grow, whether that's professionally or personally.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy that you brought that up too. And I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but Michael Easter has talked about this. He talked about it on Rogan actually when he was on there recently, because I forget who said it, but someone said that, the opposite of addiction is connection. And, he kind of said like, yeah, but at the same time, like, when I was drinking alcohol, I would have lots of my alcohol buddies around, you know what I mean? So like, it's a different type of connection. Like you have to like understand that, like, when you're drinking alcohol, you're being connected over something that's, something that's ruining your life or making your life worse. What you want to be connected to is, people who are making your life better, who are people who are pushing you, people who are encouraging you to do the healthy things. Because yeah, I mean, obviously, when you go out, you're going to, people here seriously like, oh man, why don't you just live your life? Like just have another drink or just have that bowl of pasta. Like, how can you go through life like without, doing this? And like your response can always be like, how do you go through life like living not like optimally? Like, how do you go through life not living your best life? How do you go through life, having a dad bod instead of, having a great physique? Like I think that you get a lot more out of life by, not, going into your temptations with the foods and the alcohol, and actually, building your body and making yourself feel better overall. And, I imagine that, a lot of your clients, when they come back to you after a few months or a few years, they will say that their social circle has changed because their entire lifestyle has changed. So, it kind of makes sense what you're saying.
Totally. It's cool to see that transformation too, but it can be rocky at the start because we have guys who have to go out with clients. And I'm like, listen, there's ways to navigate it. If you have one drink with a client, then let's leave it at that. But also I tell them, just blame it on me. Say that you're not allowed to, or just blame your blood work. Be like, yeah, there's stuff in my liver numbers. They're not going to know like, well, yeah, your liver enzymes elevate when you drink. Unless you're hanging out with medical professionals, but just blame it on that. And nobody can really, resist you on that. And that can help arm them for reasons to not drink until it doesn't become an issue, because it'll be like this staggering change at first. So saying things like that, or even having like a soda water or something, or just not partaking in certain activities that you're going to be around that, which might suck at first, but like you said, you may develop new relationships and end up in other social circles that are a lot more better for you to grow and actually flourish and hit your goals and stuff like that.
And I think the most important thing you said is that it's going to suck at first, because people need to understand that, like it does suck when you have to, potentially leave a group of friends and meet new friends. Like it's not, potentially the easiest thing in the world to do. But at the same time too, when I say that it sucks and you should know that, you should also still have the mindset that, you have to kind of leave behind, what you had in the past in order to gain something new in the future. And so, that's really difficult, I think, for a lot of people to wrap their head around too. And also too, coming, full circle sort of to the lifestyle thing. I think this surrounds alcohol as well, particularly on the weekends. Like one thing I try to do, and, I'm pretty good at, maybe I'm not perfect, but I try to go to bed, pretty similar times on the weekends as I do on the weekdays. It doesn't always work out because, just like everyone else, I like to socialize too. Like this weekend, I'm going to UFC in Toronto. So, I'm going to be up that night. There's just nothing I can really do about that. But, for the most part, I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with. They work hard during the week and maybe they have, a pretty good routine. Then they sort of just completely mess everything up on the weekends and completely mess up their gains. And so, is that something that's also kind of difficult to navigate around, particularly with these, kind of Wall Street kind of guys who like to go out on the weekends, take their clients out and, kind of live the life, so to speak?
Yeah, I actually have a new client recently who, and I think a lot of guys do this, basically eats very little during the week. And then the weekend is God knows what happens. And so we figured out he was eating around 1,800 calories throughout the week, and he trains hard, and he was training 4 to 5 days a week. On the weekends, it was like his kids' food, this snack here, as much as he could, like very much a binge type of disorder. And so I said, there's a few different approaches that we're going to take with this. First thing I'm going to do is raise your calories, which is scary for somebody who's trying to get leaner. Now, his body fat is maybe like 18, so he's not necessarily overly obese. However, there's some improvements we have to make. And I said, I'm going to increase your calories because you're not eating enough during the week. There's no difference between if we take 10,000 calories from the weekend and disperse that over the course of the week versus you blowing it out on the weekend. However, it does have detrimental effects on your mood, your behavior. You're not going to be fueling your performance throughout the week. And he didn't even make the connection how he was depriving his body throughout the week during his hard training sessions and how he could lose muscle mass from that. So we instantly raised his calories, protein specifically, mostly because most people are low. And he's like, I'm so full. Like I can't, I don't even want to binge. And I'm like, this is part of the plan. But I have to preface it with the scale will likely go up because you just have more food volume throughout the week. So don't freak out. We're going to go by what you look like, what your clothes, how your clothes fit, all that stuff. And he in 2 weeks or almost 2 weeks, he hasn't gained any weight. He feels a lot more satiated. He doesn't feel the need to eat everything and binge and all that. And he has actually gone to social activities where the kids do whatever and then the adults are all drinking. And he's just like, I have to put my foot down. He actually had to leave early because people are really hyper pressuring him to drink because that's what they're used to. And I said, it's going to take time. And he's like, I have to find a release that is not alcohol and not food. And I said, I can give you permission to binge on absolutely anything you want until you feel sick, but that's not going to solve the problem. It's a short-term thing, because you're going to remember, I am not going to do this ever again. Kind of like when people are really hungover and they're like, I'm never drinking again. And that lasts like
Yeah,
three
everyone said
days.
that.
Yeah, like we've all been there. Trust me. I said, you have to kind of sit and really think of like, what is it you're trying to escape? And a lot of this can be resultant from some sort of trauma or childhood trauma or whatever. But that's what you really have to address. It's not the actual activity of binge eating, because that urge will be there if you don't address the root cause of it. And it clicked for him. And he was like, yeah, you're right. Like he realized
That's very, very, very good advice. I think that a lot of people, when they have an issue, no one actually says to them like, well, why do you want to binge eat, or why do you want to binge drink? Like, what is the reason? Like, why can't you, feel good without doing those things? So, I think that's something that's very, very important. And, I'm glad that you're doing that with your clients. Your clients are definitely lucky to have you. One thing I wanted to ask you about too, just coming back to the training aspect. So I'm in like guys training hard. So I'm a big proponent of progressive overload. Like obviously, over time, you do plateau. And so what do I mean by progressive overload? Like it doesn't, I'm not saying that it doesn't matter what reps you're doing or what exercises selection you're doing. Like those things are critically important. And I'm a big fan of doing 3 to 5 reps, and then also too sometimes just finishing off on like 8 to 12 like that for a lot of things. But in terms of training, like is that kind of the mentality that you sort of bring with a lot of your clients, that like, listen, you got to get just a little bit stronger over time? And I know that this in some ways sounds simplistic, and I understand that strength doesn't always equal gains or hypertrophy. But I think that in the early stages, like if you're just starting training, it absolutely does. There's a correlation, meaning like if you can bench 200 pounds, you're going to be bigger than someone's benching 100 pounds. If you're benching 300 pounds, you're probably going to be bigger than someone's benching 200 pounds. Once you go up beyond that, like maybe then you need to get into, some specialization body weight or bodybuilding exercises that, add more hypertrophy. But I think that for the most part, if you just want to get really in really good shape, just focus on progressive overload and the results will come. And then when you plateau, then maybe they can go back to you and ask for different exercises or, different rep schemes or whatever it is. But I think the focus on in the early stages should always be progressive overload, get stronger.
Oh yeah. It's funny because there's still people who think that workouts should change weekly, and that's not,
insane.
yeah, that's not really. The reps and the sets might change over the course of a certain type of program, but definitely not early on. And our approach, I've coined the term GPP for TRT, meaning general physical preparation, which is used in sport prep until somebody gets into SPP, which is specialized physical prep. GPP is more getting a guy healthy and resilient and in a place where if he does go on TRT, or even if he's already on TRT, it'll work that much better for him. So we want guys to move towards 15% body fat or even lower, where they're going to be the healthiest, no inflammation or next to none. And they have an efficient aerobic conditioning platform, which guys hate. A lot of dudes don't want to do aerobics because they think that their muscles will fall off and they're all of a sudden going to melt. So my initial phase with somebody who's very deconditioned or has a lot of body fat to drop is higher reps and a lot of just slow, low intensity aerobic work, because they never do it. And I explained to them, it's like cardio is almost anabolic in a sense, because this is going to allow you to recover better, sleep better, utilize the food that you're eating a lot better. And you could start to eat more because you're healthier. So in a sense, you're going to add more muscle. And then if you add more muscle, you're going to look different, be more jacked, and be able to eat a lot more carbohydrates and actually use them. So going through that phase, they hate it, but they realize, oh, this is actually really beneficial. And then as they start to get leaner and transition into more of a hypertrophy phase, then they can tolerate more carbohydrates. They feel a lot better. The focus changes to more performance in the gym, where now they're lifting a lot heavier. And then when they get through that, it's kind of like an endless circle of hypertrophy and strength phases, because over time, they're going to get a lot stronger. They're going to put on more muscle. They're going to want to PR in certain things, but they also want to do it in a way that's not going to kill their joints. So then they're like, cool, I feel a lot better. I can move a lot better. This is actually enjoyable for me. So then they can push themselves without fear of injury. Or if they just didn't know how to do things, now they realize, oh, this is actually pushing myself. So it's funny because it works really, really well. They just have to get through that first phase that they don't love.
Yeah, the progressive overload is, like I said, I think that's the big key in the beginning. And one of the things that I really like that you said there too was, about the carbs coming in after. So, you do have to sort of earn your carbs, so to speak. And, the more muscle you have on your body, the better your insulin resistance is going to be, the more you're going to be able to tolerate those carbohydrates. So yeah, early on, like, if you're, really overweight, I do think that, just cutting out a lot of the carbs. I'm not saying you have to go completely keto. I'm not saying that calorie counting doesn't work, but usually, cutting out carbs and having a low carb diet in the beginning does usually work. But when you add in like high performance stuff, then it can become sometimes detrimental to the performance, not necessarily to your overall physique, but to the performance. Although it can affect your physique if your performance is severely affected and you can't kind of lift the weights that you could. But, for myself, like I've done keto before, I don't mind doing it, but, I'm super active. I basically work out every day. All of my, workouts more or less have, one power lift in them. And then when I'm, not doing cardio when I'm not lifting weights, I'm usually doing MMA, which is, pretty intense cardio. And, I do everything like wrestling, jiu-jitsu, the whole thing, boxing, kickboxing, the whole MMA gamut, MMA sparring. So, when I'm doing that, that's where I get most of my cardio. But in terms of cardio, like I saw this the other day from Andrew Huberman. He kind of posted what he does. I think he does 3 strength in like Andrew Huberman style. He does like 3 strength training workouts, and he does 1 like base ruck, I think, where that's like his base cardio. And then he'll do 1, I think, like 20-minute maybe or 30-minute like jog. And then one day where he has like a 12-minute like VO2 max where he's trying to, reach the highest that he can. And I think that's great that, he has that set up. And I'm not opposed to doing that. And I think, for some people that might be the best route to go. But for other people, sometimes the best way to do cardio is just to play whatever sport you like.
Yeah.
Like I used to play hockey. Hockey's amazing cardio and it's stop and go. So it's, it is pretty anaerobic. And, MMA is very anaerobic, stop and go, although it is pretty aerobic at sometimes. But I think that for a lot of men, the best way for them to do cardio, if they can find the time, is just play whatever sport they like.
Yeah, we do have a handful of BJJ guys, and we use their sessions as cardio specifically. And they don't even realize the output that has. Like if they wear a heart rate monitor, I'm like, yo, you just burned 1,100 calories and you want to eat like 1,900, because they're notorious for under eating. So that's a huge eye opener for them. And I'm like, no, we don't have to do extra cardio. The only time ever that I would add that in is if one of them has some sort of photo shoot or something else where we just need to add very low intensity work just to make that more of a calorie funnel just for extra output. But otherwise, they literally are oblivious to how hard these sessions can be, because sometimes it's up to 2 hours, maybe more, how hard they're rolling. And they don't realize, oh, you got to actually eat to support that, because that's going to help you combat any injuries, because a lot of injuries are inevitable in a sport like that, or they're just going to have like nagging things come along, especially if you're older. But doing that and then playing sport, like we have guys who play hockey at night, soccer, like anything that they enjoy, even golf, walking the course versus taking a cart or pull cart.
Yeah, no, 18 holes of golf or walking is definitely no joke. Like you're going to get, people might be laughing, like, sure, it's not going to increase your VO2 max, but it's going to increase your base. Like, you will burn a ton of calories. And, that kind of brings me to my next question. Like say if someone, they didn't grow up playing sports and, they're not someone who wants to go out and start playing sports, but they do want to, start doing cardio, start burning calories, but they don't want to lose any muscle mass. Do you prescribe like a lot of like, 3.5 miles on an incline on the treadmill? Like that kind of seems like a fairly prototypical protocol that a lot of people use to burn body fat while maintaining muscle mass.
Yeah, I ask them like, what do you enjoy? And sometimes they're like, nothing. I'm like, okay, what is the most tolerable for you? So I call it Netflix cardio. Like it's going to be very mindless. It's going to be very low intensity. If you have a heart rate monitor, let's hit this low range and then just do that for at least 30 minutes. If you have time or you want to break it up and you can do 90 minutes over the course of the day, cool. It takes only about 8 to 12 weeks for those adaptations to happen. So it's not forever. It's not something that we're going to be doing all the time. So some guys may start off lifting only 3 days a week, total body. The rest of those days are going to be low intensity cardio. I'm like, find a movie, find something you like. If it's the bike, cool. If you enjoy the rower, cool. Just maintain this heart rate range and then have at it. Do whatever you want. Because some guys think cardio and they think running. Well, I hate running. I'm like, okay, don't run. Like you don't have to. You can do whatever you actually enjoy. Skiing, snowboarding, like rollerblading, whatever it is.
Yeah, just get out there and move. And I think it's really important too for, I think, it's documented in the bodybuilding community. I don't know if there's, a bunch of PubMed studies on it, but I do think that regimen of walking on the treadmill on an incline does seem to burn body fat or burn calories, which is burning body fat, while maintaining muscle mass because you have that slight, anaerobic exercise in it because it is on an incline. So I think like for people who, and Netflix cardio, like that's hilarious. That's awesome. So in front of my treadmill, I have, a TV and I just put on old UFC fights. So I just watch fights all the time. And then, I do pretty intense cardio sometimes. I don't do the walking. I just kind of, run at a decent pace. But the reason why I put the UFC fights on is because those guys never quit. So whenever I'm running, like psychologically, I'm like,
That's
well,
awesome.
I can't quit because these guys aren't quitting. So, that's one way I do it. One question I had for you too is just about like general stats of what men should be able to do in the gym. So I think it was a year or 2 years ago, I was kind of surprised the response that I got, but I posted something like, if you're a man, you should be able to bench at least like 185 for 8, like deadlift like 225 for 5. I think I said like squat 225 for 5, do like 10 pull-ups, like something like that. There was 4 or 5 like different parameters. I said like, you should be able to do this if you are a man kind of thing. And I was really surprised at how many people responded to it and commented on it and were like, yes, like they should. And so are there specific kind of like parameters or lifts that you think like, hey, bro, like you really got to be able to lift at least this amount of weight to kind of get to where you want to be?
Like, I don't know hard stats, but I mean, I compare it also to like what I do because that pisses them off. So they'll see me post a video of like doing loaded pull-ups with like 60 pounds. And they're like, fuck, like I can't do that. And I'm like, well, let's get going. Or like, I just benched 200 as a PR for myself.
I saw that. Congrats on that. That's
Thank
amazing.
you.
I haven't seen very many women do that. That's incredible.
It was a big thing for me. I'm not a competitive powerlifter by any means, but it's funny when I do post that. It is funny when it gets triggered or guys get triggered about them. They're like, shit. And I did have one guy sign up with us because he was like, okay, I saw you doing loaded pull-ups. Like, I can't do that. This is, abysmal. I need to actually do something respectable. And I'm like, cool. Like, it works, So I would say like if they can at least squat and deadlift their body weight, I mean, that's like at the minimum, but let's shoot for 1.5. And loaded pull-ups a lot goes into that, because a lot of people are heavier and longer arms and stuff like that. I have T-Rex arms. That's why my bench is my best lift. But I tell them if you have to do more than me.
Okay. Okay. That's good. You have to be able to do more than me. That's good. On the pull-ups though, you probably beat a lot of people because of your body weight, I imagine.
Yeah,
like
I did.
How much can you do on the pull-ups? What's your best set?
For 1 rep, I did 80 pounds.
Shit.
For dips,
Good.
I did 100. for two actually, but that can be scary with anyone who has shoulder issues and stuff. But I just love loaded pull-up. Like I love doing pull-ups. It's one of my favorite lifts, and it's really a
Same
great
here, actually.
way. It's a great way to build a back too. Like,
Yeah.
there's so
And your
many different
biceps
grips.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
like I use a few different grips. Like when you do your pull-ups, do you use a few different grips? Or you
Yep.
mostly stick with the what? Yeah. Yeah. And like when you do your pull-ups, do you do like how many would you do, say, in a back workout, or do you have like a specific pull-up workout? I'm a bit of a pull-up guy too, so I love this stuff.
It depends like what type of phase I'm in. So I've had a coach, Luke Lehman. I've had him for 6 years. So he knows I love pull-ups. So he'll throw them in. Sometimes it'll be like sets of 5 with weight. And then sometimes it'll be sets of like 8 to 10. It sucks the higher ones because it does get exhausting. And then
Yeah.
different grips. So right now, I'm not doing any right now, but the last phase was overhand loaded with 45. So I was doing sets of 5 overhand. Sometimes he'll throw in pauses or a negative. So I had to do sets of 45 with a 1 second hold at the bottom. So just a dead hang, which is a little bit more difficult than if you're using like that stretch from the muscle to come back up. Always go full range. So all the way down, all the way up. So I get upset when people are like doing pull-ups like this. I'm like, that's not a pull-up.
I always hit
Yeah.
my chest off the bar. I don't count
Yeah.
unless my chest hits the bar.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
why I
Or
do
chin over it at least,
Yeah, yeah, at least. And also, too, we should mention that it is a great way to build your biceps as well. You can get super jacked. Like gymnasts, for example, they have insane biceps, and I don't think they do. I mean, maybe they secretly do some bicep curls without telling their coaches. But from my understanding, gymnasts, they don't incorporate any bicep curls into their training, and most of their bicep development does come from doing pull-ups.
Oh,
So,
yeah. And there's a version called a lean away pull up that specifically focuses on the eccentric of the pull up. So, like, if I pull myself up and then when I come down, it's slow, but I'm pushing away, which really is going to hit on here. It's hard as fuck,
Yeah.
but it works. So, anytime you're adding an eccentric to that pull up, usually you're going to hit the biceps or put those under load for a while.
Okay. Before we move on from training, are there any other tips or anything that I kind of missed that you really want to get out there, or you feel like we covered things pretty good?
No, I think we covered everything.
Yeah, I think we covered thing too. And the last thing I'll just say on that is, try your best for the most part to stick to most like compound lifts. So, deadlifts, if you're going to do deadlifts, I highly recommend, I'm not saying you don't have to do conventional deadlifts, not saying that at all, or sumo deadlifts or anything, but if you're struggling with doing them, if you have back injuries, trap bars, can make a pretty big difference. When you're using, like for bench press right now, for a few years, I've been using a Swiss bar. So, for people who are just listening, it's more of like a neutral grip. So instead of having, my fists looking like they're horizontal, they're more like vertical. And so that kind of takes a little bit of the ease off my shoulders. And then for squats, you can always use, a safety bar. Some people find that to be a little bit more effective, again, because the hand position is not, behind the neck, which can be a little bit awkward. You're holding it out in front. And, front squats is another, thing you can do. Obviously different muscles hit, but yeah, stick to the compounds.
I love that. I love front squats too.
So I need to ask you about this, because I know you said you're the queen of men's health talk, but the normalizing boner talk. But there was a hilarious study that I thought that came out. I talked about this on my last podcast too, comparing Viagra and Cialis. And what they did is they asked their partners what their partners prefer. And in this study, it came out that 80% of partners preferred that the partner had Cialis, and then 15% Viagra. I don't know about the other 5%. I guess they just want their man to be impotent. I'm not really too sure, but just kind of an interesting thing. So I'm not sure when you talk about boners with your clients, like, do they often say like, which one should I use? Which one is better? Like how does that conversation usually go if it does come up?
First of all, I want to know why they preferred Cialis. Like, what was the?
I would say that it's because it's more on demand. Like with Viagra, and that's just due to the half-life. So for Viagra, the half-life is about 4 to 8 hours. So, pretty good part of the day, but maybe not the full day. With Cialis, it's a full 24 hours. And it has been approved for daily use. So you can take Cialis for daily use. The other part of that too, which is really important, is that these medications, so PD E5 inhibitors, which are Viagra and Cialis, they've been approved for BPH, so benign prostatic hypertrophy, so enlarged prostate, so guys peeing at night all the time, or just peeing during the day, or peeing all the time. So one thing that can actually help reduce that is these medications. And I'm not sure if you're with Kyle Gillette, like he's been on my podcast before, he's been on Huberman a couple of times. So, Kyle was saying that in general, it usually reduces nocturia or going to the washroom at night by about 50%, which is pretty amazing. I mean, a lot of other, drugs that we have on the market for, treating nocturia or peeing too much at night, they don't have that much of a reduction. So just kind of curious, like, how does the conversation go with guys that you have? Do they feel comfortable talking about it? Do they feel not comfortable talking about it? And do they ask you, like, which one should they use?
They do feel pretty comfortable because they usually have been following me. They kind of know what they're getting into. I don't really talk about it cryptically. I just directly ask, like, are there any sexual performance issues? Are you getting morning wood? Like, have you tried any of those drugs? So then they usually will say, like, yeah, I've tried them. I haven't. Which one? I like Cialis because also it has been shown to help with endothelial health and longevity in men. So it is something they can take low dose daily. It also gives a great pump in the gym. So they like that. But it's pretty open with the conversation because I ask also on our intake forms if they've suffered from any erectile dysfunction, premature delayed ejaculation, and then ask if they've tried to overcome that or when that started, when they first noticed it, stuff like that. So it's a pretty open conversation just because I just directly talk about it with them, and they will offer whether they've struggled with it or not, or what they've tried to do to overcome that, or if they've sought out any other medical help for that. So they're pretty open about it. And guys who suffer from maybe sexual performance anxiety, or maybe can't get a full erection, or just haven't in a while, and they're working on all the other stuff like their lifestyle and all that, then I think using Cialis is a good way to kind of help them gain that confidence in the short term. And then if they want to go on the low dose for long term for health reasons, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that, always, like we've talked about really the whole podcast, you want to address like the root cause. And, if the root cause is, low testosterone, and you fix your testosterone levels, whether you do that through lifestyle or nutrition, or whether you do that through, taking exogenous testosterone, I think that's critically important. Like you said, too, there could be, some kind of just, psych thing going on where they psych themselves out, everything's kind of working fine, but, it's just sort of like a mental block that they have. But, when guys are embarrassed to talk to me about it, like I always say to them, like, you should be way, way, way more embarrassed about not performing for your girlfriend or not performing for that girl than to, coming to me and asking me for a prescription. And because as harsh as it sounds, and I'm not trying to be crass or anything, I'm just trying to give people a dose of reality. If you don't perform, that girl is going to be disappointed, and she's going to go tell all of her friends. And that's just it's true though. I know what girls are like that's the way they are. You're laughing now, you're nodding, you're smiling. If that happens, if you, something like that happens, guys should know, girls, they may say in the moment, oh, it's okay, it's not a big deal. But in their head, what are they really thinking, and what does happen afterwards?
Yeah. And also I'll help them navigate that conversation because a lot of women feel that it's their fault. And so they take it personally too. So I'm like, listen, you have to reassure her that it's not because of her, unless it is. But that's another discussion, because there are men who can perform perfectly for their girlfriend, but not their wife. And that's also another very taboo topic, but that has come up. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, we're going down that road. So obviously, then that's not necessarily a true performance issue if you do have the ability to get an erection for somebody specific. So they
Yeah.
also,
It's an interesting point you said there too, because I just saw this clip yesterday. I forget who said it, because I always like to give credit to the people who teach me things. But he was talking about, why do people have sex more at the beginning of a relationship than at the end of a relationship or during a relationship? And he said that, a lot of it has to do with anger. And so, when you meet someone initially, there's no like built up or pent up like anger necessarily against that person. Like you just met them. But when you get into a relationship, sometimes people do things that you don't really like, but you don't want to say things because, you don't want to create any commotion. And then it kind of builds up this sort of like resentment and anger over time. And then because of that, you end up, not being as attracted to the person or not want to like, rip their clothes off, so to speak. But it also ties in back to testosterone as well, because if you are kind of just in like a relaxed, chill, happy mood, your testosterone level actually will increase in that point, and in that case, because your cortisol is going to go down. But if you're someone who's like super, super stressed out all the time, your cortisol is going to go through the roof, and then your testosterone level is actually going to drop. So what I'm saying, and I've said this before, there is an inverse relationship between testosterone and cortisol. And that's why, when you do feel like some people even get horny after they like meditate kind of thing, just because they just feel like they're completely chill. So I think it's important too to, chat with guys a little bit about, maybe there's like an anger component involved in all of this. And again, this is not something that, I do or I've done. Like I literally just like saw this clip yesterday and I thought it was kind of, interesting. And I thought I'd, bring it up today because it does seem to kind of chat in tie in with our discussion.
yeah, that is interesting. I didn't see that, but it also kind of brings into play the impact stress has on men, and they don't associate that with their boner because they always associate it with testosterone. And you will hear from guys, oh, my testosterone's fine because I can get raging boners. I'm like, cool, that's not the only thing that testosterone provides. And then on the flip side, the opposite can be true as well. And I try to paint the picture where if you're stressed out, you're not going to be able to achieve an erection. And for fitness people, the analogy I use is if you're going for a PR in, let's say, front squat, you're coming out of the hole. It's very stressful. So you're literally slowly grinding up, like you're shaking, you're holding your breath, your eyes are bulging, you might shit your pants. Like it's literally extremely stressful on the body. And then some chick walks in front of you, is like, yo, let's go. You can't switch gears that quick to pop a boner. Like it's almost impossible. And that's the same impact that stress has on their body. And they're like, oh, like totally have to reframe the mind. And I'm sure you've heard the terms point and shoot, where point being erection is tied to the parasympathetic nervous system. So you have to be calm, rest and digest mode in order to spring an erection. Sympathetically is tied to ejaculation. So when you're, fight or flight, like, yeah, you can ejaculate way easier than if you were just like super calm. Like, I don't know anyone who meditates while they're having sex or whatever, but like that helps kind of reframe how things work in men when it comes to being able to obtain a boner. So if you're stressed out all day, every day, if you've got deadlines to meet, if you're like hyper focused on the computer, you can't necessarily shift gears that quickly. And that's similar to what your body is going through when it's stressed out, because it's not saying, oh, I am stressed the fuck out, I'm going to procreate now. Like, no, it's just trying to keep you alive.
Yeah, exactly. So don't like, freak out if you can't get a boner when you're stressed. It's kind of, normal physiology just sort of kicking in.
Yeah.
But at the same time too, make sure you can get a boner. So make sure that you can, decrease your stress level to a point where, you can perform and you can, do and perform when you want to is important as well, because, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with sort of like, planning sex ish, but like, it's also too, it's important to be spontaneous as well. You kind of have to have like a little bit of both. Like maybe sometimes it's coming, but maybe sometimes you don't know it's coming too. I think that's super important.
That's what she said.
I love it. I know we only have about 10 minutes or so left, and there's one thing that I'm sure a lot of guys ask you about, and I'm kind of interested in if there's been any decreases in performance in the gym and actually in the bedroom too with this. So a lot of guys are very concerned about hair loss, and I noticed on one of your videos too, there was a pass smash, which is kind of hilarious. But you passed the Propecia. So Propecia is finasteride. It's probably the most common medication used for hair loss in men for, I don't know, maybe 2 decades or so, however long it's been on the market. It does work by decreasing the conversion from testosterone to DHT. So some people think, oh, this is amazing. I'm going to have all this testosterone and no DHT. And because of that, I'm not going to lose any of my hair. I'm not going to have my prostate grow, and everything's going to be great. But the reality is that DHT is also critically important for your overall well-being, your mood, your sex drive, everything that you think testosterone is good for. So because of that, I think that when people use Propecia, they do end up getting erectile dysfunction, or they may end up not performing as well in the gym. And is that something that a lot of you guys ask about you at Merrick Health? Is this a big issue, and what do guys do about it?
Yeah, it comes up a lot. And I think the biggest problem is men who take it proactively, and they're not even genetically predisposed to hair loss. They're just like, well, if I go on testosterone, I'm going to lose all my hair. And that's not true. So if somebody is genetically predisposed to it, testosterone may speed that up, but it's not a guarantee that go on a TRT and then hair goes away. So I think they have to really do their research as to what is this drug doing, because it's blocking an enzymatic reaction, which usually is not a great idea. Same when guys take anastrozole and they're blocking estrogen, like men need estrogen. So
yeah.
The tie-in between the blocking this enzyme and not allowing for DHT, there's men who have very high levels of DHT on their labs and they have full head of hair. So it's not a guarantee that if all of a sudden, if you have a high levels of DHT, you're going to lose your hair. So I think just taking it because they're trying to be proactive about something that may never happen puts them in a position to be victim of some of the detriments that can occur from losing their hair, like you said, with ED or post-finasteride syndrome and some of the issues associated with that.
Yeah, I mean, we probably don't have time, unfortunately, to go too deep into post-finasteride syndrome, but it is something to look into. And like, if you are thinking about taking Propecia, I mean, I would really weigh the risks and benefits before making that decision. I really basically try to steer people away from taking Propecia when they come to me. So I understand hair loss is important to guys. They want to keep their hair and all that kind of stuff, but balance it out with DHT, because low DHT is probably going to be worse for your mood and worse for your life than losing your hair, even though you may not think it. So really, really important point. And again, I know we only have a few minutes left, but I do want to ask you about women's TRT as well. So I do prescribe testosterone for women. I've had some excellent success with it. I just do it topically. I think you said that you started your TRT journey about 2 years ago, if I'm correct. And so, I've said this before on the podcast for people who haven't heard. So women do have more testosterone in their bodies than estrogen. So again, I'm not saying that women have more testosterone than males. All I'm saying is that milligram for milligram, there is more milligrams of testosterone in a female than there is estrogen in a female. And so, not considering testosterone as a replacement when we're talking about hormone replacement for females is just crazy, because, it may in fact be I'm not saying the most important one, but just as important, I would say, is progesterone and estrogen. So, what was your reasoning initially for even getting your testosterone levels checked? And then, when you did check, what was your sort of thought process? And, okay, I'm going to start taking TRT. I think this is a good decision for me.
So I'm like really weird, like major nerd and just love doing blood work. So I used to do it like every month just for fun, just to see like if any diet changes or training changes like move the needle. And so throughout this process, and I started like obsessing with this maybe like 2012. And throughout that whole time, my testosterone was never optimal. It was always like 18 or 19, which I think the range was like 21 to 45 or something on the lab I was using. And I was like, I lift heavy. I diet this way. I do this. Like, why isn't it going up? And that really annoyed me. And years later, then I was like, well, it's still low and I still felt fatigued. I couldn't really increase weight very well over time in the gym, or it was just this glacially paced process, which maybe I'm impatient, but I think something should have changed within the course of a few years. And I think I never really suffered from low libido, but I think it maybe was something that I was like, okay, could probably be even better. I don't know. So I went on cream initially, and I don't know why I didn't like it, but I don't think I really felt much different. So then I went on injections, and I probably should go back on cream, or at least go on cypionate. I take propionate, and there's only a few pharmacies that could actually produce that, because I'm very lazy with my injections, and I should inject like every other day, but I don't. Sometimes it's like twice a week. Sometimes it's once or whatever. But it has helped my mood. It has helped my energy. It does help keep libido stable. I notice if I go a long time without injecting, I'm like, why am I a bitch? Like, you don't associate that with testosterone. I'm just like, oh, I haven't injected. It's a minuscule amount. It's also like the number one thing I get trolled on the internet as well. Partially because the way I look. So I'm very polarizing, that I have short hair, I have muscles. So guys are like, well, clearly she's on tren and 200 milligrams a test. And I'm like, cool, clearly you know nothing about this. So why are you even talking? And sometimes it's scary because they're like, oh, I can't show my girlfriend this because she doesn't want to look like you. I'm like, cool, she probably never will. But if you train when you're on TRT, it doesn't mean you're just going to explode into muscles. Like, I've been lifting weights since I was 15 years old. So it's like I've had this under my belt for a while. So I think similarly to men, there's this misunderstanding that if a woman goes on testosterone, she's going to turn into a bodybuilder. And that's just not true. So yeah. It is important.
I mean, people have different preferences for different physiques, and like that's totally fine. But like, people should understand that you do not look like the way that you look because of TRT. Like, it's like it may have helped a little bit, but it's mostly because of your diet, nutrition, your training, your lifestyle, not over consuming alcohol, all those kinds of things. And so I think that, it's important for you to say that, because a lot of women think that if they touch testosterone, that they're going to, morph into Arnold Schwarzenegger the next night, or they're going to start growing hairs everywhere. And it's like, no, if you just take a little bit, it's probably not going to change your physique almost at all. It may make it a little bit easier for you to get to the gym, motivate you, and maybe lift a little more, like a tiny bit. But it's really not going to do all those things. What it is going to do is it could improve your mood, like you said. Like, it may dramatically increase your energy levels and your motivation. And like, that's the reason why, women should be taking it. Not necessarily like, sure, it's great to have the fact that it can help in the gym, but the major thing is that it's helping you when you're not in the gym. Like you said earlier in the podcast, you only go to the gym for an hour a day, maybe. Right. So, the other 23 hours, that's when it's really going to be doing the work. That's when it's going to make you feel better. Anything else I kind of missed there on the women's TRT?
No, I think you covered it all. It's just understanding that that is part of that, because women do have physicians that are afraid to use that, or they won't use that. And there are people that are like, women don't have testosterone. Why do they have to replace it?
Yeah, that is wild that some people think that. And you do use progesterone as well, correct?
Yep. I've been on progesterone, I want to say almost 2 years. That's been a game changer for sleep. So
For sleep. I was going to say that's incredible for women for sleep. And then I use it too for women who have a lot of trouble with PMS or get, cramping. If you use it just on days 16 to 28, it's magic, like for some people. I mean, I don't want to say it's magic. I'm kind of overhyping it, but it is magic for some women. Like it can be incredibly effective. And as you may or may not know too. So I'm, a pretty big, I'm a cannabis advocate for using it appropriately. I'm not someone who thinks high THC is good. I think that, CBD is good. And I think that using CBD and THC in combination in medical, doses is good. Again, I don't want to, be too much of a, nerd or stickler here. Like if you want to use it recreationally on the weekend and, you can control it and you don't, have anything that happens to you and you have a good few laughs and makes you feel good, like go for it. But, in terms of like how to use it, CBD does seem to be effective for endometriosis and for a lot of girls for cramping. So I find too that the combination of progesterone and CBD can sometimes be effective.
Oh yeah.
Allie, man, it's already been over an hour. Things kind of just blew by.
That was fast.
But, yeah, that was super fast. But yeah, it's been amazing chatting with you today. But please tell people, I'm sure there's lots of people who want to know how they can have you as a coach, where they can find you online, your Instagram handle, and all that kind of stuff.
Yep. My Instagram's the best place to find me at the Allie Gilbert, ALI. And in the links in the bio, we have our application to apply for coaching. We have our links to my men's health event, the Silverback Summit, which we'll be doing in November this year. So keep a lookout for when we announce that, and DM me because I answer all my DMs, and that's pretty much where I'm the most active.
Awesome. Get jacked with Allie. Go check out her Instagram page and do it. Thank you so much for coming on, Allie. I super appreciate it. And as always, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And I'll be back again next week.